The first of our E climates is the tundra. And so the tundra latitudinally and on our graphic is kind of sandwiched between the subarctic climate and the polar ice cap or ice sheet climate region type. What are some characteristics of the tundra, the frozen tundra? First off, the climate, we're going to see drastic seasonal daylight variability. What I mean by that is during the summertime, they're actually during the summer solstice, these places will have a 24-hour day long period. But then come December, they'll have a 24 hours of night. So of course, as we march through the seasons, there's a good amount of time during the year in which these places that are in the tundra climate have no solar radiation at all. Or if they do, very minimal amounts. That plays a key role in the very, very low temperatures we'd find here. Further, although there isn't a lot of precipitation, the snow that does fall it doesn't go away. It never really melts away. It takes a long time. It takes you have to wait till that very 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 short summer period for that snow to actually melt. And so here we have places that are essentially have a perpetual snow throughout much of the year. 10 months of the year on average. Even some places in the tundra that are frozen, essentially the ground is frozen, so it's called permafrost. That's where the ground is frozen for at least 2 consecutive years. So in some parts of the tundra, we actually see that. In terms of where we find the tundra, it's going to be poleward of the Antarctic and Arctic circles. So it's going to be mostly found in the northern hemisphere, but we're going to find it once again poleward, or in the case of the northern hemisphere, north of the Arctic Circle. In the case of the southern hemisphere, south of the Antarctic Circle. But for the most part, we're just going to think of it being kind of this northern sliver of Canada, this northern part of Alaska, and this northern part of our good friend Russia. These are going to be places that are very cold and dry. I've already explained the cold part. That's latitude. Dry, the dominance of the polar high pressure. So this is places that are very dry because of polar high pressure very nearby, which constantly is there, kind of bringing cold, dry air to the surface. And so we think about the precipitation. Not much of it happens here, but when it does happen, it really is not going to go away too quickly because of those very cold temperatures. Further, these are going to be places that are recently covered by glaciers. This is going to be something I want to emphasize more later in the semester, but glaciers are nature's bulldozer. I mean, they just this level and essentially flatten everything in its path. And so one of the things you'll notice, these areas will tend to be kind of flat where we have the tundra. And a lot of that's because it was recently covered by these large, we're talking thousands of feet thick sheets of ice that essentially have retreated and have essentially melted back or retreated back to, in the case of the northern hemisphere, over Greenland, and the southern hemisphere over Antarctica. So these are places that are recently essentially flattened by glaciers. And we're going to look at some images that really showcase that. In terms of its temperature and precipitation profile, comparing tundra to subarctic, here even greater fluctuations. Wow, that's from its daily seasonal variability. The reason why it's higher just because of this particular location compared to the other one. But look at the cold temperatures we would expect at these very high latitudes. Now look at precipitation. Very minimal amounts of precipitation. So when it does happen, it's that very brief, short growing season there during the summer months. And so the polar high pressure, even more of an influencer here over the tundra. So once again, we think the reason why there's no trees up here, not enough precipitation, along with the latitude providing too cold of temperatures, the permafrost. But even if there wasn't, there's not enough rain to sustain woody plants. In terms of where do we see in Northern America the tundra here, much of Canada, so Quebec, much of northern Quebec, much of northern Canada, around the Hudson Bay, all the way till we get to kind of northern Alaska, would also be part of this tundra climate region. In terms of its characteristics, using the net radiation and snow cover comparisons, we see net radiation, kind of think of this northern edge of Canada and Alaska. Definitely variations in the radiation. We have the fluctuations were of green, than red. So similar to the subarctic, huge contrast between the summer temperature and the winter temperature. Snow cover here, places that have a good amount, 10 months of the year in which you find snow covering. A very, very short growing season. And that short growing season we can see in terms of the types of vegetation here. The tundra is also referred to as the polar grassland because we kind of have these grasses, these short, small little grasses, mosses, lichens, uh, you know, very, very small grassy plants. And so when we think about the animals that roam these areas, they're mostly going to be herbivores. Not a lot of animals to munch on. Not a lot of stuff going on here. So the things that you do find, migratory birds that might come during this small period, because keep in mind, this is usually underneath snow cover. And so when that brief growing season happens, that brief kind of melting period happens, all the animals come out. The birds migrate up. The large animals kind of start looking for various grasses to eat or maybe other critters to eat that have flocked to the short growing season. These are areas that have recently been covered by glaciers. So just think about a glacier kind of coming through here. This glacier would say it's as tall as this mountain. And this glacier, nothing but ice. And so it comes through here, it pulverizes, and then it melts. So essentially flattens the area, then melts. And so we can see throughout much of the tundra, kind of these little small little lakes that are scattered throughout the tundra. And that's essentially from that melting of the ice or of the snow and melting on a flat surface. This is going to kind of fall and kind of just melt wherever it is. And so you see these small little lakes that dot throughout the tundra. In terms of that short growing season, it's not really too colorful. I mean, look at the colors here. It's pretty brown. This is during the springtime. This is during the September autumn period. This is very brown, not really much green happening here. That's largely related to the latitude and the lack of sun. But whenever you do see that kind of that short growing season, it's kind of like these small little flowers and these grasslands kind of add some color to what is very, very, very bland landscape. But another thing you notice about this is, if let's say I ran my four-wheeler through here, one of the things is this is very sensitive in terms of vegetation and landscape. And so if my four-wheeler would have left tracks here, those tracks would probably be still there, still be there 2-3 years down the road. So humans, they definitely can leave their impact here, but for the most part, humans don't live here. In terms of who lives here, this is kind of like party time. We've got kind of that short growing season, so all the animals come out of the woodworks. In this case, I believe these are some type of sheep of some sort, or goats maybe. And so here we do see polar bears, and polar bears they come out uh, during the dry period, or sorry, the summer period, but they're there throughout much of the year, and so these animals have survived that long winter. And whenever that short growing season, it's party time. It's time to stock up on some food. Finally, I like looking at kind of where people live and breaking down the images. So one of the things you'll notice in all these images, you don't see a lot of clouds. Once again, the polar high pressure. These are going to be areas that are quite dry. During that short summer period, we do see the melting of the snow. But this is once again in the summertime, it's very brown, not much color. In the wintertime, with 10 months of snow, it's very white with the blue sky. And so over time, these people have added to the lack of color by adding color to their houses, to their shelters. So one of the things culturally, you kind of see the addition of all these colors. Just kind of makes sense to add to what is otherwise a very depressing climate region.